If you ask someone how to improve your chess, they probably say tactics and strategy, or openings and endgames. Yes, they are important, but today I will teach you something that you probably never heard of, which is 3 steps to unlock your full potential in chess. This is probably the best piece of chess advice you will see in quite a while, so do not miss out on that. To prove this method works, let me show you on my progress. If we expand the timeline over here, you can see that I joined around March 15th on Lichess, and I started with a rating of a bit over 2,000. Well, in the course of half a year, I am currently rated 2400, which is a 400-point gain. Well, I only study chess for about 4 to 5 hours a week, and now I'm literally rated 400 points higher than before. This is basically almost impossible at such a high rating, a high level. So today my goal is to teach you the key that I managed to do this, and in case you're rated somewhere like around 1500, a mediocre rating, then I'm pretty sure it's going to bring you way over 2000, potentially 2200 or even 2300. Well, my key to improvement was not training a lot of tactics or doing a lot of puzzles, training on a lot of games. Well, my key to improve was actually contemplating over my success and failure over the course of almost 1000 games, which helped me to find the optimal way to play chess and unlock my full potential. Reason number 1, not playing stable chess and getting into unnecessarily complex positions with people at a lower strength than you. Because in extremely complex situations, you cannot ensure that you can beat an opponent weaker than you. Rather, the key change from a mediocre chess player to a strong player is learning to play some slow, simple, and stable chess. Let me show you an example. Now we are seeing 6 pawns from each side, a bishop against a knight, and 2 rooks for each side. Now, you see, obviously here's this move, capturing the pawn on b7, which could potentially lead to c6, which might get your bishop trapped. Now, another option, of course, if we come back to this position, would be rook a1. Which move do you think is better? I'll give you 3 seconds to answer that. Well, if we come to the analysis page, indeed it tells us bishop b7 is the better move because it wins a pawn, even though c6, after which we have rook b4, and takes, we take the pawn. And according to the engine, we are winning. However, we also have this move, rook a1. Now, you see, the advantage is slightly lower, around half a pawn, rather here it is a full pawn. Now, if we play some casual moves, you will quickly realize that the position is actually rapidly spiraling out of control. Because we have a powerful rook on the 7th rank, there are weak pawns all over here, the knight is not going to go anywhere soon, which is obviously a lot easier to play for white. Now, comparing these two positions, which one would you actually go for? I'm pretty sure a lot of you wouldn't try to go for this risky approach of sacrificing an exchange for 2 pawns. Because in this position, potentially, you can lose easily. While in this position, you can just play comfortably on, keep on pushing some pressure, and eventually you will just simply win. That is basically the difference between playing a slow, simple move like rook a1, which we probably all can see because we're trying to control an extra file. Rather, bishop b7 will be extremely risky, and rook b4 is difficult to spot. Now that brings it to my conclusion that oftentimes there are many moves that are so simple and clean that you would just simply miss it and try to find something much more complicated as a solution. And the benefit of doing something like this is actually very obvious. Not only are you approaching chess more efficiently, you're also avoiding risk, and eventually tempting your opponent to take some risks. Of course, if we go into my games, my profile, I can just basically randomly click on a classic game that does not require me to deal with an extremely dubious opening. We can just randomly select one, and we will find that it is a win for me. For example, this one. Let's quickly go through the game. You see, this is an extremely classic opening line, the Maroczy bind. My opponent tried to cook up some messy stuff here. Of course, I could allow him to play h4 and try to conquer this weak pawn on the square h4, but why go for complexities? We play h4 myself, we control g5, and we've got g4 secure as well, which is an extremely logical move. Now, immediately after we castled, potentially, of course, you could play rook g1, g4, g5 to attack, but why not just play a safe and developing move? Because of our powerful center, if our opponent can cook up some counterplay, we're just simply better. And if he tries to cook up counterplay, there's a huge possibility that he might make a mistake. That's why in a few moves he tried to create some counterplay. We took more space, simple chess. We didn't try to break open anything or try to attack. We just grabbed space, and eventually he go for some complexities. We trade down some pieces. Even though we're down a pawn, we've got a clear plan to centralize the king, bring the rooks, and all of a sudden we are actually slightly better because how we intruded into the back rank. We're destined to win b7 pawn after some moves. Like, we just secure the pawn structure. We don't even try to gambit and try to win, like, say, win the g6 pawn while sacrificing the a4 pawn. No need. We are just simply playing simple chess. Eventually, we won another pawn. And with the coordination of my pieces, we simply checkmated. Well, you see, the game, originally black was slightly better, but pretty soon, when he's forced to go into some complexity, forced to put this king over here, try to abandon his king with the rook and try to potentially win, guess what? I checkmate you. And it's just simply over. It is such a clean game. I didn't even take that much time to consider things. Just casual moves, easy moves, a clear plan, and in the end, I won. That actually brings us to tip number 2. This tip is that oftentimes you are extremely passive from the start of the game. You suffer passivity throughout the entire game. You never get initiative, and put in the future, at one point, you just can't bear the pressure, and you crack, you make a mistake, and simply you lose. This is extremely common, and in a way, when we are playing with opponents at our own strength, it is a part of the game to try to conquer the initiative. How are you supposed to actually take the initiative? The first step is, of course, you need a plan. Even a bad plan is better than no plan. If your opponent's just, let's just take a simple example. Let's say your opponent is just shuffling the knight back and forth from the start of the game. Are you sure you'll win the game? I can pretty confidently say you'll win 99.9% of the time, because potentially that 0.1% your internet goes off. That is basically what beating a person with no plan, with a bad plan, looks like. Only exaggerated. So what you should do is to just play a safe opening and then start doing your plan. Your plan can literally be anything, as long as you're consistent, as long as you're still focusing on the plan. Because, you see, in this game, our opponent first played h5, and then he shifted focus to the queen side again, which is inconsistency. And in a few moves, he decided to castle, trade off some pieces. He brought out the queen and immediately brought back the queen. That is inconsistency in the plan. And now we've got the initiative. We grabbed space, and unfortunately, we made a mistake here. Missed knight g4, a strong move. But in the end, we are always on the upper hand, and we basically win in the end. We're always on the upper hand. We still have this idea of rook c7, even though we are down a pawn, even to the last moves of the game. It's me who's having a plan, which is exploiting this weak king on h6. Overall, this is initiative on the game plan, and another important part is actually taking the initiative on clock as well. Let's say if right now my opponent has, let's say in this position, I played this move. Suppose our opponent currently have 5 minutes, and I also have 5 minutes. Do you think he's going to blunder this checkmate? No, he's not. That is a great example of playing on the clock, because over here you can see my opponent is really low on time. Thereby, overall, if we play an active and, of course, a safe game with a clear plan and taking the initiative, beating your opponent is not that difficult. The final step is the correct thinking system. Let's find a critical position, and let me show you how I actually think. Guess what? Let's just take my immortal game, my best game of all time, in my opinion, and let's shift back to this position. Here is the thinking system I'm going to introduce. First up, check for opponent threats. Well, in this position, we have a threat here, of course. We also have a potential threat of playing this, trading everything off, which is going to be a much better situation for my opponent. Another threat, of course, is playing g5, blocking off the knight and capturing it, because it is almost trapped. Only we can retreat, of course, but that is also a potential possibility. Now, the second step is remind yourself of what you're trying to do. Now, if we track back a few moves in the game, you can see we're trying to open the h-file. We're trying to occupy the h4 square, and we're also trying to take the f-file. Now, the third step is selecting candidate moves. Well, in this position, obviously, one choice is responding to the threat on g7, which potentially might mean a move like g5, stopping g5 from white as well, and creating a potential outpost in the future on f4. Candidate move number 2. We can play something like queen d8. The idea, again, is protecting knight, stopping g5, and if something like takes, we potentially might move the knight out of the way, check with our bishop, even sack the bishop, and then bring in the queen, because a rook and a queen on this open file is extremely powerful. Now you came to realize that potentially there's this possibility of knight f5 as well, which has the logic of knight f5, gf, ef, and bring the queen over to g6, a powerful threat. Now we have three candidate moves. So first we can filter out g5 because g5 from white is not a threat right now. Knight g7 is not wise because it is opening lines for me. And we can also filter out queen d8 because potentially after knight g7 the e6 pawn is weak and it is going to be bad for me. Also, knight f5 is achieving the same goal more forcefully. That's why I play this move, knight f5, an extremely impressive move in my opinion that has quite a deep and creative idea. If I did not introduce you to my thinking system, do you think you could have seen knight f5? That is probably pretty difficult. But actually, with our thinking system, it turns out to be quite easy. Why? You look at threats, you try to think of some moves that might stop this threat. Once you think of this move, you think of this move, and once you think of this move, you realize you're trying to bring your queen over, which potentially might be removing the e6 pawn in some way. That brings us to realize knight f5 is an extremely creative move, and if takes, we are probably winning. So overall, this thinking system helps you to avoid potential blunders from your side, because you are analyzing what threats your opponent has. And secondly, it helps you start from what is obvious and dig down step by step to find what is not obvious. And oftentimes to prove that you're stronger than your opponent is not playing a beautiful tactic, rather it is proving that you understand the position better than your opponent. How do you understand the position? Of course, you first analyze it, and then once you analyze it, you quickly come to realize that the surface is not enough. It is only possible when you dig down a bit, calculate some lines to find further inspiration from the position. So, in conclusion, this is how you can actually put your brilliant tactical skills and analytical skills to use. I can safely say many of you has the potential to be a lot rated more than your opponent. A lot higher rated than what you are right now. Because at one point in the past, I'm also thinking that I'm pretty good at tactics, I'm pretty good at strategy, but I'm just simply not beating opponents that are weaker than me. And now, after this long time of contemplation, I realized that these three super easy to implement methods can actually change so much. Because I think most of you might study and play chess for like 1 hour every single day. And imagine if you put in all that effort and now you unlock your potential as well. What would you be like? You would be quite a beast in the world of chess. So I hope you learned a lot in this video, and please go and try out the plans. And if you don't feel everything is perfectly right, be sure to contact me, reach out to me, so I can help you unlock your potential. In my opinion, a key thing in chess is playing games and reflecting over them. So if you got any inspiration, be sure to discuss them with me as well. I would love to feature it in one of my future videos and share your knowledge with the entire world. I understand this video is pretty lightweighted, the methods are pretty easy, but I promise you they are extremely, extremely effective. Now, this is probably not good enough for stronger players, so I'll be making a why you're rated below 2500 sequel pretty soon once I finish the Road to 2500 challenge series. So be sure to subscribe so you won't miss out on that episode. And also, importantly, sometimes watching other people play games are pretty important as well. And the current series I'm doing will help you do that quite a bit. Now, go play some games, and if what I taught you worked out, which it absolutely should, then come back and drop a like to tell the broad audience of YouTube that this video is actually good. See you next time. Peace until then.